I fear not the dark itself, but what may lurk within it. Welcome to Lurk, bringing you creepy, strange, and bone-chilling stories, with your host, Jamie Jackson.
Hey Lurkers, welcome to episode 40 and the first episode of 2022. I hope everybody had a great New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. I personally am happy to see 2021 end. That is, of course, as long as 2022 proves to be a little bit better. I'm slightly hopeful, but I'm not letting my guard down. Some exciting news. Lurk is number 3 in the Paranormality magazine's top 10 paranormal podcasts. Voting takes place from the 21st of the month to the 20th of the next month. You can vote one time per email, but you get 3 votes when you vote that one time. So you can vote for either the same podcast, Lurk, or you can vote for 3 separate ones, but I don't really know why you would do that. Just vote for Lurk all 3 times. The website where you can vote is paranormalitymag.com/vote25. We'll be listing the website in the show notes and on social media. So if you could vote for us, if you think we're doing an okay job, I say we. If you think I'm doing an okay job, vote for Lurk. It would be awesome. I'm really competitive, so I would really like to hit the number 1 slot at least just one time. Just one time. So we were number 2 for a couple months. We dropped to number 3. So let's try if at least one of the months here in early part of 2022 we can make number 1. So today's episode, I will be sharing some stories from a couple of investigations that will also include any EVPs that I may have to go along with them. The first investigation that I'm going to mention takes place in a small graveyard in the Tidewater region of Virginia. There were never any actual stories from this location, but we had actually spent time there, and it was always a creepy kind of vibe when we were there. And by we, I mean my family. I'm not going to be discussing or disclosing the exact location or name of this graveyard and the attached church because I don't want people going there and being disrespectful in any way. As I said, I have visited this place along with my family for genealogical reasons. We have family buried there, which is kind of a no-brainer because that's why I would be doing genealogy research. It just has a whole creepy vibe. It made me think there might possibly be something going on. We did some investigations, and I did write to the pastor at one point. I emailed them to get information about the church. As far as the church history, the land was deeded to the church in 1838. There's some mention in the history that the church was built the same year, but it doesn't become part of the church circuit until 1843. The church circuit was basically a group of churches, and there was usually one preacher that was responsible for that particular circuit, and they would travel to the different churches on certain weeks to give the sermons. The Civil War was hard on the church. A trustee report from October 3rd, 1866 stated, "The church was very much injured during the war and was rendered unfit for worship, but within the last year it has been repaired in part by donations of friends. The preacher in charge has occupied the pulpit regularly since his appointment to this circuit. In view of the monetary pressure of the country, we would not advise any additional repairs at present. The church is not enclosed. A good well is convenient." In 1890, the church was completely rebuilt. There is a graveyard there surrounding the church. In addition to that visible graveyard, there is an additional area of unmarked graves, allegedly, in the woods behind the church. It's likely that the graves could have been marked at one time with wooden markers, and they would have rotted away. But there is some mention that there were slaves buried in that area. One of the first times we went there to do a little investigating, we were able to capture EVP that made us think that maybe we weren't welcome there in the area. So I'm going to play that EVP clip real quick. Here that is.
We're trying to understand what you were saying.
So in that EVP recording, you can hear my uncle say, "We're trying to understand what you were saying." And then there's a response. What we've always thought that it said was, "I said run, run." That response, coupled with feeling like we weren't welcome in the area, kind of made us think whatever's there just doesn't want anybody bothering them. So I'm going to play that clip for you again real quick.
We're trying to understand what you were saying.
Another time we went to investigate, we kept seeing a figure near one of the graves. Kelly actually snapped a photo and captured what many refer to as an orb. But when the photo was enlarged, it turned out it wasn't an orb at all. It was what looked like an actual head rising up from the grave of a Confederate soldier buried there on the property. Another time we were getting quite a few readings on our equipment. Of note, our EMF detectors were picking up readings that were different than what we detected on our baseline reading. By baseline reading, I mean that upon arrival, we take readings of the area, noting where any sources of electricity might be. So if we get a reading during the investigation, we can explain it or note it as anomalous. At this church, in the area of the investigation, there was only one overhead power line that was not really emitting much detectable EMF. So that was the only potential source of EMF in the area. So we start having some spikes on the EMF reader. What's interesting is that they were happening around the area of the Confederate grave I just mentioned, with the floating head coming up out of the grave. We all seemed to be a little bit on edge that night. It felt kind of like there was something in the air. We're commenting on the EMF readings and the proximity to the one grave when we start hearing sounds as though someone is walking towards us from the direction of the road. The graveyard is actually not too far from the road. The road is not very busy at night, so there really isn't any traffic at this point. Maybe 1 or 2 cars every 20 minutes or so. The little road into the cemetery is gravel, and I would think that we were about 30 feet, 40 feet from the actual main road, if that. The only light that's there is the dusk to dawn light that's located on the back of the church. We were standing on the side of the church. So we hear what sounds like someone walking towards us on the gravel from the direction of the road. We immediately assume someone's coming to see what we're up to and make sure we aren't desecrating graves or something. Our cover story every time we're investigating here is that we are doing genealogy research while we're in town. This isn't a lie, since our great-great-grandmother and our great-great-great-grandmother are both about 10 feet away from where we're standing. I don't even know if they're 10 feet away. Technically, rumor is that we might have even been standing on our 3 times great-grandmother at the time. Either way, we always say that when we get there. Okay, if anybody shows up, we're here doing genealogy research, and we're heading home early in the morning, so we had to come at night. That's what we plan it out every time we're there. So just in case, nobody's ever stopped, questioned us, called the cops, anything. So we're expecting to see an actual person show up at any moment, but there's absolutely nobody there. That's when I think I see something standing behind my car and snap a photo. Everybody was uneasy. I believe it was myself, my mom, my cousin Kelly. We're uneasy. We decide to head back to the house. So we're back at the house, and I pull the photos that I took up on the television. And the last photo, the one of the car, there's this black silhouette of a man standing behind it. Even safely in the house, we were all pretty freaked out about it. Sometime later, I received an email from a woman who lived in the house next to the graveyard. I had posted information about the investigation, though again, I did not include any information on anything specific as far as location. And this woman was pretty convinced she knew it was this particular church, because she lives next to it and her house is haunted. She said that she and members of the family often saw shadowy forms and heard strange noises in the house, and on occasion they experienced some poltergeist-like activity, where the cabinet doors would all be open or objects would be moved around. I unfortunately never had the opportunity to investigate the home before these people moved. There's a lot there that would keep some people restless. The unmarked graves in the woods, buried in underbrush and forgotten, and the fact that there might be at least one grave unmarked and under the gravel road. I know if I had cars driving over me, I wouldn't be at rest. I'd be a little ticked. So that's just a little bit about that one location. There may be more. We'll probably be back there investigating in the near future, and if anything interesting happens, I will be sure to share it. Possible little bonus episode. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump to Gettysburg and an investigation of a fraternity house in the area. I can't share too many details about location or specific fraternity information because of private fraternity secrets. When I did this investigation, I asked if I would be allowed to use if I would be allowed to use it on a website or use the photos or the EVPs, and I was given permission to do that, but only if I did not include identifying information. They didn't want anybody, they don't want people showing up on the front lawn taking pictures. It's a frat house. They don't need that. So this house was built in 1919 on top of what is believed to be an area of the battlefield. Now, this really isn't saying much, because most of the entire town and much of the surrounding area was battlefield. It was a large residence, and at first it was the only house on the street. In 1924, it was sold and became a fraternity house. There was an ownership change sometime around World War II before turning back into the frat house. 1997 to 2001, the house was used for honors housing when the fraternity lost its charter. Then it went back to being a frat house again when the charter was reinstated in 2001. There was some information that at some point, most likely sometime between World War II and when it became the frat house again, it served as a sorority house. It's important to note that within the history, in 1955, the house was renovated. It was expanded in order to have two wings. There was an old wing and the new wing that they added. So I was contacted by a member of the fraternity. I'm going to call him Brett, sometime around the end of February, beginning of March in 2008. He had been experiencing some paranormal activity personally in the building, and also uncovered others who were experiencing it as well. He and the president of the fraternity wanted to get it checked out. Brett shared several different stories about experiences he and other members had witnessed in the house. During the end of November 2007, several individuals were placed in rooms in the upstairs of the house. The lights were out in each room, as well as in the hallway outside of the rooms. This was all in the area that was the old wing and the original area of the house. Brett said the newer wing didn't have much activity at all. So there are people in the rooms, lights are out, and Brett and another fraternity member are seated outside the rooms in the hallway. I imagine this is one of their secret rituals. So Brett and this other fraternity member are in the hallway, in the dark, for several hours. They were sitting in the area of the floor where the new and the old wings divide. After about an hour and a half, they heard something coming from the end of the hall on the old wing outside of room 201. No one was in room 201 at the time. This was the room Brett stayed in, and he was in the hallway. The two men then heard footsteps coming from outside room 201 in the short corridor that leads to the staircase. Both guys jumped up to see who was coming down the hall, but no one was there. So they sat back down, and at some point during their vigil, Brett's companion left, and he was replaced by another fraternity member. An hour later, Brett and the new guy hear a door to one of the rooms creak open. So they immediately believe that somebody must be exiting one of the rooms, and they're not supposed to, I am assuming. That this is part of the ritual, that they stay in the dark in the rooms until they're let out. So they believe, based on the direction of the sound, that it was coming from the area of rooms 202 to 204. So they jump up to go see who would open the door. They go check the rooms, and they find all of the doors are closed, and all of the fraternity members are seated the way they were placed in the room to begin with. No one had opened the door. The staircase near room 201, where the footsteps were heard, is connected to the library, or rather, the library is located just off the staircase. There was someone in the library during all of this, and he reported hearing weird stuff from the stairs during the same time Brett and his companions were hearing the footsteps and door opening. A week later, Brett is in the house alone. He's in his room, room 201, and he hears footsteps on the stairs. He just tries to ignore them, thinking maybe someone else had returned, even though not too many people use that particular staircase. Brett told me that up to this point, none of the activity experienced entered the rooms or had been destructive. Brett also stated that he never really believed in the paranormal or had any paranormal experiences before living in the fraternity house. He began asking around to see who else might have had strange things going on. He learns that there were two members who stayed in the house over the summer who had heard, quote, some weird crap that could not be explained on more than one occasion. So there's another night that Brett is there in the house alone, in his room, again, room 201, and I keep repeating the room number because his room becomes important, or the history of his room is important. It's about 12:30 a.m. His room is a small single room, and he has what is called a loft bed. Usually there's like a desk area underneath, and the bed is above, kind of like bunk beds, but without the bottom bunk. He's in bed, trying to get some sleep, and his bedroom door opens. Brett gets up, closes the door, lays back down. Suddenly, while he's laying there, there's this strange white strobe light type light filling the room. His first thought was that maybe it was a snowplow driving by, but there was nothing outside and nothing that would explain the light. The road that the house is on is a side street in a residential area and not really very heavily traveled at all. Especially this late at night, there probably would be virtually no traffic. So, nothing that would really explain where the light could come from. Brett brushes it off. He eventually dozes off. About 5 to 10 minutes later, he wakes up to his entire bed shaking and feeling like something was pushing him towards the wall. He jumps up, turns on the lights, leaves the room. He ended up sleeping downstairs on the couch that night. In hindsight, he mentioned that the weekend before, he had been partying and had had too much to drink. I know that's a total surprise in a fraternity house because they don't really drink at all there. While he was heading down the staircase, he smacks the wall with his hand and says something like, "F you, ghosts." He realized pretty quick how stupid that was. Taunting spirits is not a smart idea. I really cannot stand when some so-called paranormal investigators resort to taunting to try to get evidence. If you can't count on your skill and knowledge to try to get some evidence, you probably shouldn't bother investigating. That's my personal opinion. I have witnessed what happens when somebody taunts spirits. You get knocked on your butt. And I personally feel that it is rude and disrespectful. If you wouldn't do it to somebody who's alive, don't do it to somebody who's dead. That's just kind of how I roll with investigations. So, he had this experience where his bed's shaking. He feels like something's pushing him towards the wall. Brett also mentioned that the attic has been condemned and closed off. Residents sometimes hear scratching noises coming from the ceiling area of their rooms from time to time. Most have the assumption that it's some sort of rodent nesting up in the attic somewhere. But they called in exterminators, and each time the exterminators have come in, they haven't found any rodents or any evidence of rodents. Personally, I kind of chalk this one up to rodents. It's an old house built in 1919. It's got a condemned attic, and I kind of feel like there's probably something in the ceiling. Maybe it's ghosts. Maybe it's ghost mice. I don't know. As I mentioned earlier, I believe, anyway, Brett isn't the only person who has had some experiences. There's a member named Brad who had the light in his bedroom turn off and on at night, and this was witnessed by a second person as well. Another guy named John heard voices coming from the stairwell and footsteps coming from the upper floors during winter break. He said it definitely felt like something was there. It scared him to the point he slept with the lights on and the door locked at all times. He thought the upstairs was creepy and he wouldn't go up there. His room was located on the first floor. Another person remembered a time when a bottle was flung off the bar into the wall and smashing. No one was around it when it happened. Banging noises had been heard in the area of the stairwell when no one was in the area. During one of the fraternity's rituals, individuals took shots of vodka in the bar room with the lights out and placed the glass bottle on the bar. The bottle slid all the way down the bar without anyone touching it. The drinking ritual wasn't ever performed again. Brett said there are 3 other times he woke up to his bed shaking, and he also heard, at the same time, the sound of kids laughing. There is nothing creepier than that. Creepy, creepy, creepy. So, each time that Brett had the bed shake and he heard the kids laughing, he left his room and he ended up sleeping on the couch each one of those times as well. We did the investigation mid-March 2008. I went into the investigation with the assumption that this was going to be another case of Civil War hauntings. The house was built on the battlefield, or at the very least, it was mere feet from the battlefield. And this investigation also taught me not to make assumptions. We didn't get any photographic evidence during the investigation, though that really isn't very surprising because photos are really hard to come by. Upon conducting our walkthrough, we noticed that there was a high EMF reading throughout the areas of the investigation. What was rather odd was that it was like a column of high EMF that ran from a second floor bedroom down through the library and continued down to the basement floor. There should have been no high readings from the floor of the basement as it was concrete and had absolutely no electrical wires running through it. Also note that the areas in which this vortex, for lack of a better word, ran through were all rooms that were noted to be high in paranormal activity. The bedroom that I mentioned on the second floor is room 201, Brett's room, and the library, they have heard the noises that are the footsteps that are going on the second floor, the staircase, and of course down in the basement, which is where they have a lot of their rituals and their bar. As I said, we didn't have many positive photos, but we did obtain EVP recordings. While conducting EVP sessions, we were getting positive responses to the question of being female. Late in the investigation, Brett remembered that there was a small memorial plaque in the courtyard that was dedicated to one of the house mothers that lived in the fraternity house in the 1940s. This information fit most of the responses we were getting. Now, a house mother was a woman that stayed there in the house and took care of the members of the fraternity. She cooked for them, cleaned up the house, looked after them. They don't have house mothers anymore. So the spirit did not seem to be very happy with the type of rituals the fraternity performed during the initiation. This explains the heightened activity during the lights out ritual mentioned in the beginning, as well as the drinking ritual, where the glass bottle slid down the bar. The ghost was successful in stopping the drinking ritual because sliding a glass bottle of vodka down a bar and smashing glasses into the wall are pretty effective ways to stop somebody from drinking if you're a ghost. Not so much if you're alive, but if you're a ghost and they can't see you, that's going to stop it. It did. While conducting the investigation, we learned that the staircase that is mentioned in so many of the experiences at one time went all the way to the attic before it was condemned. Of interesting note, Brett's room was once part of the staircase, and it was the entrance to the attic, where at one time other bedrooms were located. Brett's room was not added until the attic was condemned for habitation. After being condemned for habitation, they moved the attic entrance and converted the old one into a new bedroom. Chances are there are some residual hauntings going on with some of the footsteps and door noises. Probably some very confused ghosts that are trying to get to the attic by way of the staircase, and they keep confronting Brett there in his bedroom, trying to figure out what the heck's going on. So I'm going to share with you now some of the EVPs that we were able to record during the investigation. The first one that I'm going to play, there was a question about whether or not the spirit was male or female. There's a response that seems to indicate female, and there was a question about whether or not they lived in the house, and there seemed to be a response that they had. So let me go ahead and play that for you.
Speaking with in the other room. Are you male? Are you female? Did you live in this house? Were you here during the Battle of Gettysburg? Are you the person who likes to open and close the door in this room?
Again, not super clear. It's just the fact that there were responses during that part of the question. So I'm going to go ahead and play it again.
Speaking with in the other room. Are you male? Are you female? Did you live in this house? Were you here during the Battle of Gettysburg? Are you the person who likes to open and close the door in this room?
All right, this next one, there was a question about whether or not they were confused by the bedroom, and the bedroom being Brett's bedroom, bedroom 201, there at the top of the stairs.
Can we speak with the person who likes to go in the room at the top of the stairs that used to be part of the stairwell? Are you confused by the bedroom that's at the top of the stairs?
Again, not super clear. Can't really make out anything, but I'm going to go ahead and play that again.
Can we speak with the person who likes to go in the room at the top of the stairs that used to be part of the stairwell? Are you confused by the bedroom that's at the top of the stairs?
This one, when I was listening to it in preparation for this episode, I actually determined, because I'm listening with headphones. When I am recording, I have a fancy set of headphones, so I look the part. I realized that there was a relatively clear response in this particular EVP. So we asked a question about whether or not the spirit was happy with the ritual. So when we asked that question, there may be some things before that, but when we asked that question, listen closely to what it says.
about the ritual that I cut you off. Female? Are you female? Do you not like the ritual that they perform here?
What I believed it said was either keep them out or get them out after that question about being happy with the rituals. So let me go ahead and play that again, and you'll hear it because I told you that's what it says, but I'm going to play it for you again.
Is there something that you want to say about the ritual that I cut you off? Female? Are you female? Do you not like the ritual that they perform here?
This EVP, we were standing out at the plaque in the courtyard. This was after we realized. And we asked the question if they wished that more attention was paid to the plaque in the backyard. And then we also asked it to tell us the name again. You can't really make anything out. There's just responses after these questions.
Do you wish more people paid attention to the plaque that's in the backyard in your honor? I don't think we've still quite been able to understand your name. Can you try telling us again?
So I'm going to play that again for you one more time.
Do you wish more people paid attention to the plaque that's in the backyard in your honor? I don't think we've still quite been able to understand your name. Can you try telling us again?
All right, we have 2 more EVPs with this particular investigation. This one was a clear one. The question was asked if, are you the one who likes to open and close the door down here in the basement area? There's a door that would open and close. And so I'm going to play that for you now.
Are you the one who likes to open and close the door down here?
So the response here is, yeah. I'm going to play it for you again.
Are you the one who likes to open and close the door down here?
And this is the last EVP for this particular investigation. We were recording, not asking any questions, just had the recorder recording, which I do often. Sometimes I don't ask any questions. I just let it sit somewhere and record for a few minutes to see what I might get. In this one, it actually sounds... Well, let me play it for you first. So here's that recording. So what it sounds like is near the end, it actually sounds like it says, F you. The second part of that, I thought it perhaps sounded like Eisenhower. Of course, Dwight Eisenhower was United States president. I like Ike, and he had a farm there in Gettysburg. He lived in Gettysburg after his presidency. So let me go ahead and play that for you again. I'm not 100% on the Eisenhower part, but see if you can hear the FU part of this recording. So I have one more quick little story to share about another investigation in Gettysburg. This one took place during one of our regular Saturday night trips to the battlefield. I think I might have mentioned these before, probably in episode 21, that on Saturdays, there was a group of us that met for dinner. We went out on the battlefield investigating, and then we would go for ice cream and debriefing at the Lincoln Diner around midnight. Basically, it was a lot of eating with a little bit of ghost hunting. That's kind of what we used to say. I really, really miss that. Just on a note, the Gettysburg battlefield now closes at dusk, so there is no more hanging out on the battlefield until 10 p.m. This particular story happened in Spangler Spring, which always seems like an active location. I've mentioned other stories in episode 21, the Gettysburg Stories and EVP episode, and episode 16, My Son Who Saw Dead People. They all contain stories that were from Spangler Spring. On this night, there was the usual group of people, and we were walking down the road that heads towards the Gettysburg area schools, with the parking area to the left and the Indiana or the Tuning Fork monument to the right. My sister and her boyfriend were walking in front of me, and I was about 5 to 10 feet behind them. I'm going to say it's probably closer to 5 feet. And then there were some people behind me. It's not totally dark yet. It's dusk, so there's still some light to see by. My sister had long hair, and she had it up in a bun, held in place with a scrunchie. So basically, if you're familiar or not, usually girls take their hair like they're going to make a ponytail. They coil it around to make the bun and then put the scrunchie in place to hold it in place. That's important. As we're walking, I see my sister's hair start to fall out of the bun. But as I watched, her hair uncurled from the bun. It stood straight up in the air before falling down, and then the scrunchie just dropped to the ground. My sister asked, "Who's messing with my hair?" And I made some sort of flippant comment about not seeing anyone. The people behind me also were able to see some of what happened. It was probably one of the coolest things that I've ever witnessed. And no, I did not get a photo. It all happened in just a few moments, and I didn't even have time to react. Trust me, when something like that happens, when somebody's her hair was in a ponytail, it's like if somebody grabbed the end of the ponytail and held it up in the air. That's what it looked like for a few seconds before what it looked like somebody let go of it and it kind of flopped down and the scrunchie fell on the ground. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing experience. So that's going to do it for this episode of Lurk. Don't forget that you can vote for us in the Paranormality Magazine's Top 10 Paranormal Podcast. The website is in the show notes or on our social media pages. You can find episodes of Lurk wherever you find your favorite podcasts, or at lurkpodcast.com, where you'll find links to our social media pages. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we have a YouTube channel. We also have merch at lurkpodcastmerch.com, and if you have any personal paranormal stories, please send them to us. We would love to read those, and we're going to keep those and save them, and every so often I'm going to have a storytelling time where I share experiences that some of you lurkers have had, so you're not always listening to my stuff all the time. So that does it. Happy New Year to everybody, and as always, keep lurking.